Now, coming forth in a lineup of 4, I thought I'd keep it simple and highlight a few key themes around the lens that we might use to approach our business moving forward. The first thing I like to call the age of do and learn. And Mel's just talked a lot about the whole aspect of test and learn. And most of us are familiar in some ways with that concept. And as it's been bandied about for many years, often though test and learn to date for many companies and brands is still seen as a one-off or as a nice to have and not necessarily embedded in and institutionalized in terms of how a company is looking at actually pursuing their business. And currently there's a lot of talk about the growth of real time and how this relates to a test and learn approach and the pressures that that brings. And the reality is that real time has already even now existed for a long time. It's just exponentially increasing even more in terms of the volume and the ability for consumers to respond faster and in more ways than ever before. People are empowered with a real-time voice and impact, and we all witnessed Rage Against the Machine taking the Christmas #1. It's just one recent example of this. In this fast-changing environment with ever-increasing real-time data, vision and long-term strategy is more important than ever. So is having a roadmap. What real-time enables you to do is to really adjust along the way. And those adjustments do not always have to be media-related. More often than not these days, they can be message-related as well, as all of this integration comes together. So it's really about moving beyond the test and learn to instead institutionalize it and make do and learn integral to how we do business. It's about shifting the lens to view long-term strategy, being clear in what success looks like, and being flexible in how both our structures and our processes actually adjust to make that happen. Second theme I would flag is looking at the art of the possible versus the use of what's available. We definitely have moved beyond the days of buying what's for sale or even buying what isn't for sale. It's now really about widening the scope of what could be done, often in channels or with approaches not previously explored. A key part of this is identifying opportunities to create and leverage content in new ways. Again, this theme of liquid content. Advertiser-funded programming is effectively becoming a window shop for further brand extensions. You may have recently seen an Evening Standard article that covered advertiser-funded programming, mentioning a couple recent collaborations with some of the UK TV channels. One was Channel 5 and its Chinese Food in Minutes series, which was paid for by Sharwood's cooking sauces. Another is Channel 4's TV Book Club, which was sponsored by and fully funded by Specsavers, and that actually afforded Specsavers a presence in all of their bookshops around the country as well. So it's about really extending that presence. But business clients are also seeking greater depth and leverage from their content. A recent example of this was some work that was done with Oracle last year, where their challenge was to educate the sales community on some of Oracle's more vertical products in that area. And what was new was establishing a way of working with media owners and also industry experts to really create an integrated, bespoke community for sales professionals. And so it really was about bringing, really competing entities together and for something that would provide value, for their particular audience. Some partners included more traditional media owners like the Wall Street Journal. Others were more industry-based, such as the CMO Council. The content that was brought together from these players, along with content that was actually created by the community, and they had 2,000 people join this community, created a plethora of content that then actually extended the messaging even further, and that entity continues on, and the partnership is evolving. And in terms of business results, their sales leads jumped about 20%. So it had a tangible business benefit. Now, in Cyberbia, there are different types of digital spaces that we've already talked about, the bought, owned, and generated or earned. Now, each space has a role to play, but while to date the majority of media investment and energy has really focused on the bought space, owned and generated really being to a lesser degree, this balance is shifting to a much stronger emphasis on owned and generated spaces. But that said, many rules of the road still apply. And just one example of this is really in terms of scalability. A good idea still needs to live within a bigger strategic vision and roadmap. Elements such as viral can be extremely successful when the viral content is great. Everyone here today would love to replicate the success of a Cadbury gorilla or Alexander the meerkat. But it's also important to remember that only 1% of our video actually receives more than 500,000 views. So the lesson, if your friend wouldn't want to see it, it probably isn't worth sharing. And it's something we inherently know, but really applying this in terms of, as we pursue this whole aspect of do and learn, keeping this in mind is also important. Because word of mouth is great, but it can't be purchased. It has to be earned, and it's the outcome of all communications. Final theme is about crafting communication solutions for a human experience. If we broaden the lens to go beyond planning and buying media in a traditional way to actually crafting communications, our approach inherently shifts from analyzing dehumanized, commoditized data to actually affecting an outcome close to end of purchase, to really stepping back and communicating earlier in more relevant ways that actually connect better with the target audience's life. Designing human experiences we see as the new normal, and it's critical that clients and agencies work together in crafting the role that the brand can play. And this is as relevant for the B2B audience, I would say, as for the consumer one. Path to purchase is no longer linear. Once someone is aware of a brand, they can become an advocate. Someone doesn't have to fly Virgin Atlantic to be able to talk about the experience to their friends, even if they've only really seen it in a movie. So exposure is still needed, but at the same time, we know that media alone cannot be responsible for end sales. So in between, there's this continuum of different steps of intent. And intent could take the form of, what we often call seek, search, and talk. So a step to find out more information, to take an additional action. It could be about changing brand attitudes. It could be about having a deeper experience with the brand. But we need to look at how we can use media to drive one of these effects depending on what the strategy demands. And this requires a change in what we measure. We need to measure what matters and not just what can be measured. Traditionally, currencies for negotiation have been linked to those of measured effectiveness. And as long as we as a broader industry are complacent about this, the longer we'll have status quo and the silos will remain. What we must strive for is a future where measurement and analytics are more about predicting and less about reporting. We must not forget that the media business has evolved far beyond media. Reputation management is just one of the areas where media agencies now have a role as a key stakeholder in these discussions. We live in a world where a brand's Wikipedia page can typically rank 3rd or 4th on Google. Obviously, Facebook, Twitter conversations happen. Content is ranked and tagged on social bookmarking sites, not to mention the blogosphere and new developments such as real-time search. A world where, in the current climate, from the time a bank announces their quarterly results, not only is it in the news, but there is a swell, or in some cases more like a tidal wave, of commentary, much of it being emotionally raw, that extends that conversation even further. The more we can actively listen and understand the issues, the more our brands can add value as an enabler, a facilitator, content aggregator, or whatever it might be. But just in terms of a recent example, think of how a more integrated overall comms approach would have helped Toyota in their recent challenges in the last few weeks. Creating communication solutions working across touch points, including social media, also means new rules of engagement for all of us, including our clients. When we choose to reach out to an audience for a conversation, this requires proper design. If someone reaches out to us, they expect a response in a manner matching in terms of timing, in terms of context, certainly in terms of message, but also in terms of being genuine, so that we can actually protect the integrity of the brand. Our clients are also facing the challenge of dealing with more stakeholders in the social media world. Stakeholders from marketing, customer service, legal, et cetera, they all have a role to play. And we need to figure out ways of being efficient and productive in how we approach this. It also means we lose an aspect of control. This can be a positive experience when approached in a suitable way. Some companies have made a shift in reaching out for input from their audience. PwC actually had a campaign a couple of years ago, What Would You Like to Change? And inviting commentary in. Other companies have taken it a step further. Starbucks, you may be familiar with their My Starbucks Idea campaign, where they essentially wanted to get a better handle on customer feedback, and so they have a site that allows users to submit suggestions to be voted on by Starbucks consumers, and then they took it a step forward with a blog, an ideas and action blog that gives updates to users in terms of how those suggestions are actually being implemented. And so by empowering their web consumer, they've actually been able to strengthen their campaign to add a personal touch to something that really is a commodity, like coffee. So listening and showing you're listening can pay in dividends. So in summary, ways I believe we can best adjust our lens moving forward is really to focus on age of do and learn, the art of the possible, and creating communications for our human experience.